among performers, in general, they seem to have gone the route of offering individual one-time grants to artists for particular projects or performances or tours. But it sounds like your organization has somewhat more direct access, which is great, and can kind of pitch projects that could potentially benefit a lot of people or that would span a greater period of time. That sort of thing.
That's indeed our target. Hi, this is Michael Quantz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, and presenting a guest host / interviewee for Brownsville Matters podcast. And this is Professor Robin Moore, who is a professor in music history at the Butler School of Music, UT Austin. Professor Moore has received awards from the Rockefeller Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and the National Humanities Center. His work and publications include the topics of music and race, music curriculum reform, and the music of Cuba and Latin America more generally. He's about to begin a new research project on the most effective ways municipalities can support artistic activity. The project builds on recent work detailing challenges facing musicians in Austin. The organization promoting this research is Support Austin Musicians. They do research that evaluates City of Austin programs designed to help musicians and the entertainment landscape. It examines existing arts programs, their individual challenges, and suggests policy changes to address those challenges. Support Austin Musicians also proposes ways that city institutions can directly help local live music making. Well, Professor Moore, welcome.
Well, thanks very much for the invitation to come and speak and learn from you all about what's happening in Brownsville. As you suggested in your kind introduction, over the past year or two, I've been working a bit with musicians in Austin, trying to determine what their primary concerns are and the challenges facing the live music scene there. We can certainly discuss that at greater length. But also, as you mentioned, one of the things that interests me a great deal is the particular ways that municipalities are engaging with artists, creating infrastructure to support performance, that kind of thing. And so in part, I'm here to learn about the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. And I'd love to know a little more about its history and its goals and its longer-term vision, perhaps, for also the sorts of musicians you're supporting, that kind of thing, particular initiatives. I just found out about your radio station, for instance, so I'm sure that would be one thing to explore also. But I guess that's my general first question for you.
Wow. Well, we have at least 2 hours for the response, so I think we'll fall within that time frame. Thank you so much for the question. The Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts started 30 years ago this year. It was a group of, thank you. It was begun by a group of physicians in the community who saw a big gap in experience for not only themselves, but for the community at large. They have had experiences in major metropolitan areas all over the nation and, in fact, all over the world. And what they discovered is there's amazing art and amazing music in major metropolitan areas. And it seemed like that could be brought to Brownsville. So they decided to do that. And they began with solo concerts, bringing mostly classical artists like cellists, singers, classical guitar, and kind of embedding them in the community in a way that is very directly beneficial to the people in the community, especially music students. It goes well beyond the usual tranche of audience attendees, retirees, professionals, and a smattering of students and visitors and that sort of thing, to really kind of engender a direct personal relationship from the artists who have always been greatly accomplished. Many, many Grammy winners, dozens of Grammy winners have been part of this process. So they give a concert, they teach the students directly in master classes and clinics, and we try and focus on music that is pretty much relegated to major metropolitan areas. You're not going to find a lot of Latin jazz in South Texas. Mm-hmm. There's some, and it's quite good, but we celebrate that. And we're hoping to expand this coming season, 25-26, to Latin music in general as something to celebrate, and have the Latin Jazz Festival be embedded within that. We also do a guitar festival that is several days, and we've had more than 50 cities participate. Student groups come to compete, share their enthusiasm for the art and the diversion of creating music acoustically, and they compete in ensembles of guitar. And we have Grammy winners come in and adjudicate and do the clinics and master classes and so forth. So over the course of the 30 years, it's expanded from those solo concerts, even in people's homes. Harkens back to a long time ago with salon concerts. And now with the radio station, we hope to promote all the arts in our community and cultural events that give the enriching, life-affirming experiences that arts have always given, the things that we're hardwired to do and experience. So we have this radio station as kind of a hub for expanding that promotion, and not only in analog broadcasts, but we're now experiencing the benefits of a grant that is a city-funded grant. The Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation, or BCIC, is supporting us with a very generous grant to upgrade all of our radio equipment, especially so we can go streaming. We're going to have multiple cameras, upgrades to just about everything, so that we can be on platforms like Patreon and Spotify and iHeart, which will, be worldwide, promoting the things that Brownsville does, especially culturally, musically, but also it gives us the opportunity to develop revenue streams that are usually not part of the strategy of nonprofit arts organizations. Kind of on the kernel of the public broadcasting, especially PBS membership sort of thing, because there's a kind of a Brownsville, Cameron County diaspora all over the U.S., Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Chicago, and we've heard from some of them that they would like to know what's going on in their old hometown. So that's part of that picture as well. So the city has supported us that way. It's also supported us through direct funding for our live performances, which, as you know, is kind of the heart and soul of music. And as well through the Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund. So that law has been of great benefit to a lot of arts organizations, some 60 in the state of Texas, but has been very supportive to what the BSPA has done over the last 30 years. We also have the usual fundraising events and specific members who work really, really hard to get connected and build relationships and friendships with others in the community who support what we do, who really want to feel like they're part of this process, and indeed are a critical part, a linchpin for the process of providing these experiences in so many different ways, including this podcast. I could go on, but I won't.
So it sounds like as things began, it was a group of doctors who sort of self-funded particular performances, and then all of that has gradually expanded to
Yes.
City grants and hotel occupancy tax and other revenue streams, and your ambitions have sort of expanded, and the structure of the institution has solidified more as a nonprofit, that sort of thing.
Including, by the way, full disclosure, a title sponsor of this program, Brownsville Matters, the Brownsville Public Utilities Board, is a major sponsor and contributor to these efforts as well.
Excellent. And is the focus still primarily on bringing artists from other areas who wouldn't normally be here to Brownsville?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of them have been here several times. They're world-renowned musicians. David Russell is a Grammy-winning classical guitarist who we've had several times and hope to have again. Just as one example, Poncho Sanchez, Bobby Sanabria in the Latin jazz world. These are Grammy nominees and winners also who are friends of Brownsville, really.
That's amazing. And it sounds like the hotel occupancy tax extends to some of the touristic areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so that must bring in a fair revenue stream. And some of that is specifically earmarked for cultural events?
Yes, it's one of the 9 categories that the law describes as being purposed for those funds. So the tax is collected by the state comptroller and then returned for cities to use for all manner of promoting tourism, including the fine arts.
And so the society, the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, presents proposals to the city council or something of that sort?
Yeah, they're through an online application process. All the nonprofits and even some LLCs are able to apply for these grants, depending upon if the project falls under the categories in the law itself.
I think in Austin there's some sort of intermediary group that receives a chunk of money and then decides how it's going to be divvied up among performers. In general, they seem to have gone the route of offering individual one-time grants to artists for particular projects or performances or tours. But it sounds like your organization has somewhat more direct access, which is great, and can kind of pitch projects that could potentially benefit a lot of people or that would span a greater period of time. That sort of thing.
That's indeed our target. And our municipality, the city of Brownsville, doesn't really restrict the type of project as long as it falls under the 9 categories outlined in the law itself. So they're very open to a broad spectrum of applicants, and we have been very fortunate to benefit from that.
Do you have some idea how much money is generated for the arts through the hotel occupancy tax that Brownsville has to play with each year?
No, I don't, but that might be a matter of public record. Mm-hmm. So an online search for that might be fruitful.
Mm-hmm. Of course. How about, I know this isn't your primary focus, but local musicians, are they engaged with your organization at all too, or is there sizable local musician
Yes,
presence?
there is a very strong local musician presence in Brownsville. We support those performers and artists through announcements, through piggybacking on our social media and that sort of thing. And we're really trying to do a better job of connecting with every event in the community. And that's one of the things that the BCIC grant will help us with. It'll give us the equipment and capacity to do that in a better way. And then we're just going to mine the entire community for volunteers to help us with that on-air information gathering and dissemination so that we can really be consistent in telling everybody what's happening, especially with our local artists.
Sure. And in terms of determining programming for a given year, is that something that your board of directors makes decisions about?
Yes, in fact, we have 3 primary events that we focus on. The Brownsville Latin Music Festival. It usually runs 1 or 2 days. Involves a bunch of vendors, all the people that are locally hired for a fairly large-scale event. Sound, equipment, artists themselves. Everybody stays in hotels. It's a real economic boost to the community, and it's not just the tourism part, although for the size of the events, we're very successful with bringing in tourists and the type of event. It's also that multiplier that, say, the film industry uses. I don't know that we can make the same claim of 6 times a magnifier for every dollar spent, but a 3 times magnifier is a pretty safe bet. So every event brings in an economic boost to individuals and the city at large, from restaurants to hotels to taxes.
And so it sounds like you have established festivals that
Yes.
constitute your primary focus. Is there any mechanism for local input beyond the board in terms of the sorts of folks who are represented or invited? I'm just kind of curious how that...
Well, we do have, through the natural avenue of social media, comments, many of which are salient, and some of which are critical. But we do pretty much listen and look at those kinds of criticisms and comments because we're open to ideas that work. And we do appreciate kind phrases rather than accusatory, but even the accusatory ones get a look at. But essentially, we are focused on what the board decides are going to be the next artists for the Latin Music Festival, the Guitar Festival, and we also have a free Christmas concert called The Messiah and More, and that's of course based on Handel's Messiah and many of the movements from that work, but also a variety of other things, including a cappella, quartet singing, instrumental pieces, and so forth. Range is usually from about 120 to 200 musicians on stage, including the choir. And we usually have around close to 650 attend that in a beautiful venue, the Texas Southmost College Performing Arts Center. Rather unique space and acoustically fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Sounds amazing. And for your 2 major festivals, what sort of audiences... what size audience do you tend to generate?
For the Latin Music Festival, we usually hit post-pandemic is kind of the qualifier phrase, but we're getting past that now. So we're hitting just about 600 for that event. And for the Guitar Festival, we still have a little bit more to go in terms of attendance. So we're hitting just about between 400 and 500 for participation in that event. So we're looking at increasing both student participation in that as well as community participation in that. Right now, it's more heavily weighted towards the student end, but one of the cool things is when people from the community who aren't, deeply immersed in the classical guitar world or acoustic guitar world come to the event, they usually go, "Wow, I didn't know that you could do that on acoustic guitar," and so they tend to come back for that. And then we also sponsor individual concerts as they become available, from folkloric performances in Spanish to piano recitals, vocal recitals, and the like.
That sounds amazing. And besides Latin jazz, what other central focus have you had in your Latin music festivals? Just curious about.
Well, there's been some really cool combinations. We've had groups that are a fusion of funk and folk and Latin jazz, salsa. There's a group called Superfonicos out of Austin that does that kind of fusion. We've had straight up Latin jazz, Poncho Sanchez and Bobby Sanabria again. Chuchito Valdez also Chucho. More, yeah. Not Chucho, Chuchito, his son.
Oh, I don't
incredible pianist, great with students, by the way, really enthusiastic and really draws them in, and basically performs with them during the clinic. And he's amazing at generating that experience that really is a different level of learning. Because when you're forced to play with an amazing musician, you can't help but learn a few things.
He's also a pianist?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Incredible jazz piano player.
And so it sounds like your festivals and a lot of the artists you bring are complementing university offerings?
Very much.
Yeah. So they're expected to offer master classes, or
yes.
Maybe they send charts ahead of time and the students work on them, or how does that collaboration work?
Usually they come in and do a clinic, and we also invite school districts to perform as part of the festival, and in a Latin vein, to kind of focus on the spirit of the event. And the students that participate are from high school all the way up to graduate university students in terms of both performing and in terms of master classes and clinics.
Interesting. A lot of the focus of my study in Austin involved challenges that were facing musicians, or kind of stresses on the artistic scene in particular ways, and strategies to respond to them in some way. I was just curious whether your board sort of discusses those issues, or if there are particular concerns or aspirations or challenges that the organization faces.
Absolutely, and the biggest challenge is the shift in the industry-wide shift in music making and music consumption. Live music is not what it used to be in terms of audience participation. Folks might really enjoy a particular artist, but won't make the move to see the artist, group or individual, as readily as they used to, because of its total availability online. And in many ways, that has really created an economic challenge as well as a participation challenge in terms of how artists connect with people. And in terms of organizations like ours, it's a much more difficult thing in terms of making the connection between the artist and the public as a concert producing organization. So that's one of the benefits we are looking at in terms of getting online for building that kind of connectivity, that kind of friendship and ownership, which is what membership is based on, to create an excitement to be there live and to experience that in the most warm and human and fulfilling way possible. And we're pretty confident in that strategy as being the foundational build for connecting live performances.
I got the impression from something you said earlier that, well, first let me say similar challenges face performers in Austin since the pandemic especially, and given the rise of streaming and mediated culture, streaming culture and stuff online, it is increasingly difficult to get folks to come out to events also. So that has impacted all kinds of revenue streams. And I've heard some musicians say they think it's kind of a generational thing also. Maybe certain younger folks are just used to watching mediated culture on a screen and aren't sort of used to the culture of going to a place to listen live and don't necessarily recognize those benefits. So I think in some ways we're facing similar challenges there. But based on what you were saying earlier, it sounded like you have two strategies. One is to generate more live audiences, and the second maybe is to sort of tap into streaming revenue somehow and sort of be a larger presence online. And I'd certainly be interested to hear more about that, or sort of how one might contribute to the other, given that, again, we're facing similar problems.
Yeah, well, it's part of kind of the delineation of groups of like. When folks really enjoy a particular artist or a particular type of music, and online is just has incredible gravitational force for those kinds of interests. So we're looking to build on that and to generate the idea that, hey, all of us can actually go see this person. We can all be there. We can have some food and experience things together that we'll remember in a different way. So we look at that as kind of the catalyst for participation live. And that's kind of the focus that we'll be driving towards with basically all of our content. Some of it, like this interview, for example, are meant to be particularly for online platforms, for analog broadcast and the like, just to be informative in a general way on those platforms. But the magic of live performance is absolutely incredible. And I hate to use the term addictive, but maybe just soulfully rewarding is better.
Well, you're certainly preaching to the choir there. I'm a huge fan of live performance, and part of my job, despite being in an academic subdiscipline, has always involved leading in student ensembles and trying to bring in artists to collaborate with, and et cetera. So I very much see the benefit. Could you tell me a little about the radio station? I'm curious about sort of when it started and what the programming looks like overall and who's in charge of that and perhaps whether it's bilingual, I can't quite, or who your audience is that's listening?
Well, let's start with the latter. We have about 200,000 people in our analog broadcast radius. We are a low-power FM radio station, which means the next closest frequency on the dial is only about 50 times more powerful than our broadcast signal. But on a good day, we reach pretty well, maybe even 240,000 folks within that radius. It was established by the late president of the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, George Ramirez, who was a local industry owner and an incredible, relentless supporter of the arts, especially the Brownsville Society. He's the one that established the Brownsville Latin Jazz Festival and rekindled the annual Christmas concert, and was absolutely critical for establishing the Brownsville Guitar Festival as well. And he had the brilliant idea to start a radio station when he read an article about the FCC opening up some frequencies for low power FM educational non-commercial radio stations. He jumped on that, and through, I think, a 7-year process, established KXIQ 105.1 FM as an educational, non-commercial radio station. He knew that that was going to eventually be a kind of a hub for arts and culture and the Brownsville experience. And we have pushed towards those goals continuously since it was on the air. And it started in 2017 with a randomized list of, I think, a couple of thousand highly curated selections of every style you could possibly imagine. Today, on the way here, I heard Elvis Presley. You can hear Miles Davis on the next cut. You could hear some amazing bossa nova on the next cut. Then you could hear Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, classical guitar. You just never know what you're going to hear, and it's kind of like, Hogwarts jelly beans. We call the now well over 5,000 selections George's jelly beans.
Well, that's certainly an apt analogy.
Hi, KXIQ listeners. This is Michael Quantz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, here to tell you about our podcast, Brownsville Matters. Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell, and these are the stories. We broadcast these stories every Friday at 5 p.m. and every Sunday at 3 p.m. on KXIQ 105.1 FM on your radio dial. You can also catch these stories rebroadcast on our YouTube channel for Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and smash the notifications if you want more information about these stories that you watch and listen to.
Do you have, are you two in charge of lining up all those cuts and making sure they're streaming, or is
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Our production manager, Gabriel Trevino, is just stalwart managing the broadcast, which is 24/7. So at the beginning of every week, he comes in, loads each selection into a specific software, translates that to a broadcast software in 1-hour blocks, and loads that into the weekly broadcast scenario, including some shows that we get from National Public Radio. Things like Stories from Texas by our own local famous radio personality, Dr. W.F. Strong. Just great, just think of the most Texan vignettes you could possibly imagine. That would be Dr. W.F. Strong. We also have an internationally broadcast show called Guitar Live, also out of Austin, that's been internationally broadcast for 25 years, I believe. And our great friend Tony Morris runs that one out of Austin as well.
And these musical selections on the radio just run one after the other, or is there a moderator? Is Gabriel on the air introducing them?
That's going to be our next stage, is to have curated radio programming through staffing, through people that just say, hey, I love this, I would like to do this show. And because it's so easy to do, you can load in the digital formats and just put them in the cloud. We download them, we program it for a particular day and time, and you're on the air. So a lot of these things can be produced at home at your own desk.
How about issues of rights and royalties and that kind of thing for streaming Roy Orbison or Elvis or whatever?
Well, there are two organizations that we have licenses, and in fact, we're looking at renewing one of them right now, is ASCAP and BMI. And those are the primary licenses for not only on-air broadcasts, but for performing produced live concerts.
And do you also rebroadcast performances from your concerts and that sort of thing? There must be some free content that or
Yes.
content that you license.
Yes. You go through the process of securing the rights, making sure that you, in the descriptions of the broadcast or the YouTube channel, for example, that we clarify that we have permission from the artist, the composer, and that sort of thing. That allows us to keep those online for free. But eventually, those are going to be put on platforms like iHeart and Spotify as well. So we'll go through that licensing process as part of that platform as well.
It sounds a little complicated.
It's a lot complicated.
I know a lot of the artists that we interviewed in Austin complained that revenue streams are shifting around, and that folks used to make a lot of money selling CDs or, I don't know, various things that have obviously that aren't an option anymore, and that streaming tends to not generate a lot of revenue for them.
Correct.
And so they're kind of forced either into live performance or occasional touring situations, if that is an option.
Right.
But it does sound like even touring is a lot pricier than it used to be, and maybe doesn't have the returns it used to have.
It depends on the genre, really, right? For example, if somebody is an individual singer-songwriter of a high level of accomplishment, they're not going to usually fill stadiums like Beyonce or Taylor Swift. People won't travel the same distance because the popularity and resonance is in a different genre. So a lot of singer-songwriter types, individual artists, classical jazz also kind of fall into that category, are going into smaller venues more frequently that used to be 60 years ago basically the bread and butter of one's financial maintenance and popularity development, touring the smaller places, which in terms of artistic presence and communication, greatly satisfying. In terms of the economies of that sort of touring, not so much.
I hear that. Well, one of the questions I had involved sort of finances and interventions of that sort. Again, the project that I've been involved with in Austin, we've confronted a lot of gentrification and really high housing prices and cost of living increases and that sort of thing. And at the same time that's been going on for a good while, payment for musicians has been pretty static. And a lot of audiences, if they're willing to come out live, won't pay much of a cover charge, and et cetera, et cetera. So if Austin ever was a live music capital, that moniker is definitely in danger these days. So the city has recognized that. The city has been attempting to intervene in various ways, but...
So what are some of those ways some of the tactics and strategies that might be useful? Do any come to mind?
Well, as I say, through the hotel occupancy tax and other municipal revenues, we have a sort of a subcommittee within the city that determines how to allocate funds. And to date, they have primarily offered small to mid-range grants, one-time grants to performers for a particular project or performance or tour or recording. They can range from $2,000 or $3,000 to maybe $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, for instance. But there's always tremendous demand, and the money runs out rather quickly. And there's also some question about whether one-time funding is the best model given the large structural problems facing performers that, in a sort of day in, day out kind of context.
Is the focus primarily to enhance the experience and the economic support of individual artists, or does that also allow for avenues of support for performing arts producers, especially nonprofits in the city?
We were quite interested in nonprofits and focused a lot on. There are a surprisingly large number of nonprofits focused on music and the performing arts in Austin. They're not all necessarily coordinating their efforts, and sometimes they also don't necessarily coordinate with the city or vice versa. There are some really important ones. Almost all the musicians that we discussed talked about the importance of the Health Alliance for Austin musicians that provides maybe $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year, the equivalent of sort of medical support for basic checkups and prescriptions and that kind of thing.
It's a very unique program.
A lot of artists we mentioned said that they really wouldn't be able to sustain what they do without that kind of support. I think it also includes dental care.
So just to let the listeners know, that is a program in Austin for individual musicians to participate in for general health care. It's really hard to produce and perform music, to compose, if your health is not the best. And just on a human level, to support musicians that have struggled, that have no other avenue of good health care. It's a remarkably wonderful program for the artists in the city.
The Sims Foundation also was mentioned frequently by the folks that we interviewed, that provides mental health care support and counseling and that sort of thing. There are some institutions like DAWA and Home that try to intervene and provide low-cost housing for artists, for instance, sometimes targeting towards particular demographic groups or older individuals or et cetera. A lot of performers expressed concern about retirement or home ownership or issues like that. I'm sure that costs have gone up everywhere, but in Austin it's been perhaps a little more extreme than other locations because of the arrival of Tesla and
multiple industries
yes.
That lead to an attractiveness for employment. There has been for generations an attractive nature of Austin, whether we want to call that weird or just arts-centered. So there's that gravitational pull in so many different ways to the community, to the city. You only have to drive through it once recently to understand the impact, much less actually pricing a home.
Yeah, I was a grad student for a while in Austin in the early 90s. And back then there had been a housing bust and folks were selling 3-bedroom bungalows for $35,000. You
Wow.
could almost get them on a credit card or with some easy loan. And actually some grad students I knew cashed in on all of that and became a little wealthier over time. I think for a long time Austin was kind of small and sleepy, and it was just the university and the legislature were there, and it was an easy place to experiment and get creative, and you could live pretty inexpensively,
right,
and et cetera. So I think all that contributed to the attempts to make Austin weird initially. But it's been increasingly difficult. Housing is real tight. The population has been expanding like crazy. A lot of musicians, older ones might own a home and be in a more stable position, but a lot of younger folks are either renting and or maybe forced out to smaller communities, Kyle, Buda, Pflugerville, somewhere maybe within a 30-mile radius because it's the only spot they can perform. That's the only place they can afford.
Right,
I think that's actually helped the artistic scenes of smaller communities in the surrounding areas and made them pretty vibrant and interesting, and help musicians focus on things that are possibilities there that maybe they hadn't considered before. But in terms of Austin, it's also kind of straining the musical scene and means that there are maybe fewer people willing to drive in and do everything they need to do, pay for parking and et cetera, and perform for their rather minimal wages in many cases.
Right. The whole scenario is much different than it was 25, 30 years ago. It's much more effort-oriented and can be more complicated in how you were describing it, to get to a venue to listen to the folks that you like to listen to, or to experience a show, theatrical or otherwise, or to even look at in a gallery. Tends to be a highly specialized kind of process when you can just look at your phone or listen to your phone. And it tends to be slightly remote. Earbuds are not the greatest sound, so you get kind of a distilled version of the sound. The screen is two-dimensional rather than three, which has an amazingly unexpected impact on your experience when you view visual art. The difference between even a page in a book or a very highly very high defined screen, high pixel count, not the same as seeing a Van Gogh live, because you don't have any idea about the texture of that visual. You can only experience it live and get its full impact. Again, we're hoping that we can make that connection, that avenue from the digital realm into the live realm. And we're not absolutely sure how we're going to do that, except to get more and more people talking about, hey, that was great. And then they post. We do things like we have a red carpet moment where folks can take selfies. We'll grab their cameras for them, and they'll take the pictures with the artists, and they'll post that. We'll post that, and it disseminates the joy of the experience instantaneously to 70,000 people by the time that event is done posting for those few days. So we're hoping to drive that impact in both ways, so that we have discovered that online and person-to-person references are the overwhelming drivers of participation in the live events. So we do a quick survey when people come to the ticket table, for example. How did you hear about the event? Oh, my friend told me. Number one. Number two, we saw it online. Number three is, we heard the announcement. And number four, which is still a shocker to us, we saw the poster. And the value of hard copy advertisements, well placed, still very high for us. Yeah.
I guess most of your festival performances and other performances take place on the university campus, or what
a couple of different venues, but the TSC Performing Arts Center, we opened that in 2010. That's a whole story in itself. It was an amazing event. It's got some of the best acoustics in the southern U.S. About a little over $1 million was spent just on the acoustics of the hall itself, a large percentage of the total cost. We had some of the best acousticians in the world design it and test it for its adaptability. Acoustically, you can actually change the acoustics in that environment through like the shells you put on the stage and sound-absorbing curtains and a generous number of locations within the hall. So you can tune it for solo guitar acoustic performance to a symphonic wind ensemble with percussion and trombones and just, really powerful instruments, so that both of those extremes sound really great. And that is an incredibly rare kind of acoustic environment. And we also have smaller venues. The George Ramirez Brownsville Performing Arts Academy is another project of George's that teaches kids in a low and middle income zone in our community. And they have a beautiful little performing venue upstairs. And so we do concerts there as well. And there are newer venues opening in the community, and we fully intend to make friendships there as well, and to take full advantage of anyone's generosity that cares to offer it.
That sounds like you have a lot of good performance venue options. Then at the university, we have issues with, traffic being horrendous and parking around the university being horrendous. So trying to sort of make some of those connections can be really difficult. I don't know if any of your events also involve outdoor performances as part of festivals. Yes.
Yeah, especially the Latin Music Festival. We have about 30 individual vendors of all sorts, from food and beverage to craftsman-like products. It runs quite the gamut. We are this year going to have an indoor venue, principally due to the fact that the last 3 years it's rained during the festival, I don't know, to beat an analogy to death, it puts a damper on the event.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, you probably know in Austin, we're known for some large outdoor music festivals, Austin City Limits and South by Southwest. I guess on some level, they've been very successful and generate a lot of revenue, typically. They've also become almost corporatized with a lot of high-profile artists brought in nationally and internationally and that sort of thing, which puts some creates some tension with local artists who would like some space there, would like the same degree of support and compensation and et cetera.
Well, and that's something that BSPA deals with too. Is that, as you put it so well, that tension between the for lack of a better phrase, the bigger draw acts and the local individual and small combo musicians. And it's kind of a catch-22, especially for those smaller, less well-known groups. They want to break into that more well-known area. But when they have an opportunity locally, like South by Southwest, how do we get into a major stage? How do we get into a featured venue to that when the bigger names are pushing against that because they're scheduled first, because the economic incentives are so high for them to be scheduled for everybody who's producing those events and contributing the financial backing for those. They're looking to make a profit on those as well.
It is complicated. I guess one of the things we were discussing with musicians was whether a certain percentage of the concert, of the festival events should be reserved for local performers or regional performers or particular styles of music that risk getting overshadowed or sort of eclipsed by other groups. Some performers, I think, they're willing to get involved on the periphery of these larger, better funded events and venues because sometimes they can make important professional connections and in other ways engage in activities that will further their careers. And so they're sort of willing to take a hit financially in the hopes that will happen.
That's not an unusual story because often a more well-known artist or group of artists will be the discoverers of a talent that they are very impressed with. And things can happen like, hey, would you be able to open for us on this next tour? And that is a career maker kind of offer. So that's a very positive tactic to use to support local musicians, is to get them in touch with the more well-known, more currently productive in terms of their audience draw artists themselves.
One of the suggestions some of our musicians had in terms of ways the city could better support them was specifically a notion of promotion and sort of booking and PR and helping them make those connections on some level, maybe by creating a citywide website that would be organized by genre or style in some way and would let anyone interested in booking particular music sort of know what was available, or perhaps facilitate the connections that you were describing in terms of making space for connections between high-profile artists and local artists and that sort of thing. In any case, I guess my team's general conclusions were that in the case of Austin, some pretty major financial interventions of a more structural nature were going to happen rather than individual grants to performers if the scene was going to remain vibrant. And we didn't necessarily have all the answers in terms of how that should be done, but we started looking at what other cities like London or New Orleans or New York or various places have done to support arts, and it seems as if a few different possibilities suggest themselves. Some cities have decided to provide a basic artistic stipend, kind of just a supplement to folks so they can live more easily, sort of paying artists directly. Some have established a basic minimum wage, for instance, for artistic performance. The city, for instance, now pays $200 per person per hour for music making, although, of course, it doesn't oversee that much music making itself and can't necessarily control what other people offer. But that's an interesting standard, and they could sort of intervene in that sense if they wanted to. Some folks have decided to offer financial support to venues, hoping that they could in turn pay their artists better and kind of stabilize the artistic scene in that way. Another option would be, if revenue were available, getting the city more directly involved in managing particular performance venues, perhaps dedicated to particular styles of music, and sort of making it visible and in prominent areas where folks visit, that kind of thing. Personally, a lot of musicians suggested that they were often a little tired of just performing in bars and trying to sort of sell drinks with their music, and they would love an alternate forum that might involve playing in the late morning or early afternoon, or for entire families, or through different groups beside young bar hoppers.
Yeah, and particularly important in those things is going to be a connectivity. Once you begin talking about these ideas, you begin to find where those resources might be available. And there's almost always a reciprocal kind of interest in something like that. Any place from libraries to community centers that have venues to the venues themselves. If it's a low cost enough kind of offering where they're not investing the funds and resources that they have, where families are invited, whether it's outdoor or indoor at low cost. And the more those discussions happen, the more people tend to be interested in doing something good like that, because there's an understanding that when you engage in those sorts of things, you're promoting everything that is associated with it, including your venue, including your organization, including your individually produced music and compositions of all sorts. So that kind of synergy is really a vital catalyst to growing those experiences for everyone involved.
Well, I certainly agree. And yeah, in the case of Austin, that's tried to brand itself as this live music performance hub, it definitely seems as if the city could step up a little more in terms of, again, featuring music more consistently in public places and trying to make kind of music more of the ambiance as people visit the city, and
kind of the spirit of the city.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess, our conclusions were that some sort of intervention of that sort was necessary, and that the city needed to maybe get creative about ways to generate a little more revenue, even beyond the hotel occupancy tax that would allow for it. it seems as if the gentrification and high cost of living, for the most part, have been generated because of the arrival of, Google and Tesla and Oracle and all these sort of large companies. And so the one thought that came to us is that the city might reach out to some of those high-earning tech folks and see whether they'd be willing to make a contribution to some sort of arts and culture fund, because it was one of the reasons that made the city attractive to the employees in the first place, and one of the reasons they wanted to move to Austin.
Right. Well, everything from those kind of individual corporate donations to small but persistent revenue streams that are online and memberships and all sorts. T-shirts and tote bags kind of memberships as well, to the more ambitious but in terms of evidence, highly successful things like a guaranteed minimum income. If you allocate that to a particular area in the community that the community feels is of a central part of the experience of everyone there in that community, there's a lot of very, very good evidence that really works. So the mechanisms of that's the tricky part. And the will to do that also tends to be the tricky part, because if it involves money and politics, it's gonna be hard.
The devil is definitely in the details. I would agree. Just trying to determine who's a full-time musician or what kind of benefit they should get, if they can hold a part-time or a full-time job, and should they still get a supplement, or if they work part-time somewhere, what kind of supplement should it look like? So just considering the direct payments to musicians, all sorts of issues arise. I'm envisioning for myself a next phase of this research involving a hard look at what other cities have done, so everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right,
and if we can see kind of what models are out there and whether there's some way to assess efficacy and sort of how well they've really been able to promote musical life or other artistic life, perhaps they could provide insights into the ways that we should go here in Texas.
Yeah, finding what works and how to allocate according to not only what the evidence, the data shows, but what the spirit of the locale tends to point to. Might not work in San Antonio. Because the spirit of the community tends to a different direction. But it's kind of always everything in the orientation for art support. Some areas of art are self-supporting, and some require, especially if they're more specialized, meaning that not quite as popular as some of the other things. And popular music is great, definitively, because a lot of people like it. I mean, that's the definition of popular music. Hey, I really like this. And that happens 100 million times. Popular music. So it's great. And then there's the process of discovery, too. A lot of people love Latin jazz, but how often are they exposed to Latin jazz, to salsa, merengue, and the more esoteric forms of music? Not everybody's going to like everything, but the process of discovery can be really wonderful. And to us at the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, that's the thing. We want to continuously create the opportunities for discovery and connecting people to stuff they would never otherwise experience. And it's a relentless pursuit. It's a constant effort to support that mission. in every way possible. And it's absolutely necessary to evolve with the environment that art exists within. It seems like your mission is dead center of that evolution and that process of discovery of how to support all of that in a way that is sustaining and encouraging to the art itself. It's been great talking to you and finding out about that mission. Where can they find out more about support for musicians in the city of Austin?
Well, our project resulted in about a 40-page summary of findings and also a website, www.supportaustinmusicians.org. And there's quite a bit of information there about the research team and a number of the musicians that we interviewed and the kinds of questions we posed and the sorts of responses we got. We have lists of quotes from musicians on particular topics about housing or income or experiences with city initiatives and that sort of thing. And the summary document is also there, available for download or to read online. There's also further reading on a number of topics related to writings on music and cultural sustainability or music cities and culture initiatives nationally and internationally, etc. So it could provide a springboard of sorts for folks to think about how those issues apply in other contexts.
Wow, it sounds like a great resource for nonprofits oriented to the arts, especially music producers, as well as the musicians themselves. So that's supportaustinmusicians.org to find out everything about those resources. You can go to that website. Professor Robin Moore, thank you so much for joining us and your questions in this dual interview.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Hi, KXIQ listeners. This is Michael Quantz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, here to tell you about our podcast, Brownsville Matters. Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell, and these are the stories. We broadcast these stories every Friday at 5 p.m. and every Sunday at 3 p.m. on KXIQ 105.1 FM on your radio dial. You can also catch these stories rebroadcast on our YouTube channel for Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and smash the notifications if you want more information about these stories that you watch and listen to.